Another Fox News host is set to join the Trump administration. President Trump tapped the 5 co-host Jeanine Pirro to serve as interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. The president announced this on his Truth Social account Thursday, posting, quote, "Jeanine is incredibly well qualified for this position and is considered one of the top district attorneys in the history of the state of New York. She is in a class by herself. Congratulations, Jeanine."
She sat at Fox's anchor desk for 14 years after becoming a household name on court TV show Judge Jeanine Pirro. Prior to co-hosting, she served as assistant DA in New York's Westchester County, then went on to serve as county judge. She was the first, by the way, woman elected to those positions there. Reactions are pouring in. Left-leaning lawyer Tristan Snell, who prosecuted the Trump University case, said, quote, "How many more TV hosts is Trump going to put in serious positions they are unqualified for? This is the U.S. government, not the celebrity apprentice."
South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham applauded the move, writing on X, quote, "Grand slam, home run, hat trick pick. I am beyond pleased with President Trump's decision." So this came after a big fight over Ed Martin, who was the acting, or still is, I guess, at this current moment, the U.S. District Attorney for Washington, D.C. One of the sticking points for him was that he did not have prior prosecutorial experience, and Senator Thom Tillis from North Carolina said that he would not vote to advance his confirmation beyond the Senate Judiciary Committee, which basically made his nomination dead on arrival. And that was when Trump opted to pick another person for that position, because if the time had run out for a nomination, the law states that the judge, which in this case is Judge James Boasberg, who hasn't been particularly friendly to the Trump administration, ruling against them on the Alien Enemies Act, would get to choose the person to fill that vacancy until Trump picked another candidate. So he really was up against the clock on this one.
Mm-hmm. And look, they've known each other for many years. I think it's interesting that she has not practiced, or I should say, held a law enforcement job in 2 decades. We know her ex-husband, her former husband, that Trump back in, I believe it was the year 2000, pardoned him, conviction of conspiracy and tax evasion. So they've got a deep friendship that goes back, that involves her ex-husband. She's also been a backer of that whole 2020 election, really spewing some of the claims that we heard on Fox that, is this legitimate? Then Fox had to settle that, some of their hosts were wrong about that, really disputing that 2020 election and that whole theory. So she's backed Trump in a number of ways. She's proved herself, we know, as a loyalist, and Trump loves a staunch supporter. And she's done that really well. And this is maybe his way of rewarding her, but it's also her way of helping him out too, because as you point out, the clock was ticking.
Yeah, I think the important thing for me is that Washington, D.C. has had a serious crime issue in the past decade, particularly following 2020. They were one of the slowest to recover from the crime spike related to the pandemic and the 2020 summer of riots. And she is a very tough on crime prosecutor, evidenced by her time as district attorney back in New York. She was very well respected in that position. As you mentioned, the first woman to be elected to that role. Ed Martin took a very similar posture to that issue, according to sources in law enforcement who spoke to the Daily Caller. Prior to Ed Martin taking over, the prior attorney that was chosen by Joe Biden only did not prosecute 67% of cases that came across his desk. That completely did a 180 under Ed Martin. He was prosecuting 65% of cases. I think we'll see very similar things from Judge Jeanine Pirro, and Thom Tillis has already said that he intends to support her confirmation as well.
Yeah, she has not been, I think important for the public to know, she has not been lawfully appointed. There's a cycle of this 120 days, and there's a timing to all of this, and, Trump selected her. So we'll see how things play out. And is he also, on a bigger picture, is he sidestepping having to get confirmation on her by doing the interim, and then how long will she be interim? So there's a lot of, I think, things that because of the way this has played out, there is a potential for criminal defendants to say, well, she wasn't the one during the time that I was maybe, in the court process. And so and she hasn't been appointed, so they could potentially have a case where they could say, we want it thrown out. Potential criminal defendants who are right now facing potential trials. So we'll see how that plays out even from that lens, which I think hasn't been talked about as much, is the impact of this for criminal defendants. It is interesting, though. Another Fox News host, I kind of sighed at the beginning of this because it's like another one. I mean, are we really just going to Fox News and just plucking people left and right? She's leaving, obviously, a lucrative TV position that she's been in for many years. I just think it's becoming to look like Fox News, and you are getting a lot of people who don't have necessarily the credentials that we've seen in the past, and we know that we mentioned earlier in the show, he bucks tradition in the way he selects people a lot of times, and a lot of his fan base enjoys that. But it is beginning to be a little bit like, okay, we get that you love Fox News, but come on.
She does have decades of prosecutorial experience, though. I mean, you could make the argument, well, she hasn't done it in a while. But
She's done it in 2 decades.
But she did serve in those roles for decades as well. And again, her career was very well respected. And, I think the Fox News thing is a little bit of a red herring because there are a lot of Democratic officials who cycle in and out of cable news jobs to join administrations. Jim Sciutto is an example of that. He served under Obama. Now he's a CNN anchor, supposedly on the hard news side. Jen Psaki and Simone Sanders both left the Biden administration to join MSNBC. I think we would be naive to think that if a future Democratic administration...
But it's reversed.
It goes the other way as well.
Yeah.
Of course.
But
I mean, it was a classic cable news to government rotating cycle,
Influence.
revolving door. So I don't think this is at all unique to the Trump administration. The other element of this that is quite interesting is that Ed Martin is not straight up leaving the administration. He's been appointed to a different position that does not require Senate confirmation. He will go to the DOJ as the new director of the Weaponization Working Group and the Associate Deputy Attorney General, as well as the Pardon Attorney, which does seem like a bit of a thumb in the eye to Tom Tillis, because Tom Tillis's objection was that Ed Martin was too kind in defending some of the January 6 rioters and people who trespassed at the Capitol that day. And he said, if he were being appointed to any other district or state or anything, then I would support him. But because it's in D.C. where the Capitol riot took place, that's why I can't support his nomination. So now going to Pardon Attorney, where he would actually have even more jurisdiction over those choices of more power to give to advise the president on who he gives pardons to. Trump is clearly saying, I'm still sticking with Ed Martin. He can't get confirmed, so I have really no choice but to put him somewhere else. But he's not leaving by any means.
Well, right, and we have seen how Trump understands politics and positioning and what he needs confirmation on and timelines so thoroughly compared to the first term. We've seen that I think his understanding of how government works was, lacking. Of course, he hadn't been in government before in the first term, and you can see in this term, he really understood, which is why I think he's moving at speed with so many initiatives, but he's understanding who he can put where and whether he needs Senate confirmation and the timelines with that. And maybe he has better advisors too, I'm not sure, who are giving him a little bit more detail on what you can and can't do, but it seems like he's getting some more wins in his column when it comes to that, right? He's understanding exactly who, to your point, who he can put where and what kind of authority is needed to approve it. So I think we're just going to see more of this going forward. I think we're probably going to see more Fox News personalities, probably in really high up positions potentially. And so this is, to me, the start. We're not even 6 months in, which is pretty crazy.
It's been a whirlwind. I mean, one of the things with the Fox News hosts that I think I see shaping out or playing out in this administration is that when he's in looking at these top level positions, he does want someone who can be on message, who can present well on TV and basically make the case on behalf of the administration as a means of combating what he sees as media bias from the establishment or legacy media. And then in the positions underneath those people, he has people with more experience, who know the ins and outs of the departments, who maybe have legal experience and are basically actually the ones pulling the levers and running the departments and the agencies, while the person at top is really more of a public-facing spokesperson.
Yeah, or a puppet, depending on how you look at it. So,
well,
yeah.
I would say that people who serve under the president should be committed to executing his agenda.
I agree with that. Yep, I agree with that. All right.
Up next, one of the world's richest men is giving up all of his wealth. Stick with us for that on Rising.